Now we've got the asset register established, we know the equipment, we know what it is, what it's doing for us. We now know the criticality of it as well. We've assigned that to understand how important it is to the business. We then move on to the maintenance. Maintenance is then allocated based on the equipment type and the criticality. And then we've got any exceptions that may come out of that as well, because there are things where there are certain manufacturers where you want to have specifically certain maintenance done on that. Again, it's about base data. If you've got that identified, very easy to allocate. As a business, Add Energy has built and delivered strategies and maintenance tasks for various different clients across everything from drilling to mining to floating production, offloading storage units, and land-based chemical plants. So we have a wide range in our library of basic strategies. These are things which we would always say is a good starting point. There's a lot of things that you can refine and add to, but really it's on a case-by-case basis we would do that. It's better off having something which is the basics in place that you know you're going to do before you start refining that down to the context and type of equipment it is. So in here you can see, if we open up electrical for instance, we can see we've got our maintenance library AE001, which is rechargeable battery strategy, and it goes on to different things. So again, if you as a client have your own library of maintenance strategies, we would just incorporate that in here. We would have the availability to fill some gaps that you have potentially with our library, but ultimately it gives you a place to store your maintenance strategies. Normally these things sit in someone's bottom drawer or on the shelf somewhere, and trying to apply them becomes difficult. Same sort of thing when we talk about failure mode and effects analysis. All our strategies are based on RCM techniques, so we're looking at the mitigating task is tied back to the failure mode that we're trying to mitigate. So you can see that in here where we have the failure mode and effects analysis actually sits in here. Once you've got your failure mode and effects analysis in place, you can then load your asset register, then be in a position to be able to attribute the context of those failures to that piece of equipment to move from a failure mode and effects analysis to a failure mode and effects and criticality analysis. So in here, the basic failure modes can be in here. You can see it contains a valve to contain fluid or gas, fails to contain it, and then you can start seeing that we've got in here the control leakage and things like that. What we then move on to is the maintenance. So we've established that the maintenance library and tasks are based on FMEAs, which is great, which means you're actually then doing real tasks that add value to your business. Because again, we're in the position where maintenance is there to be done because it's cheaper than not doing it. So again, maintenance has to justify itself. We would never advocate just putting all the maintenance in the world in there and saying your plant is better, safer, and more productive. It's about a balance between getting the right sweet spot between over maintaining and under maintaining, and that does move around on asset life as well, because as things get older they potentially need more maintenance, and you may decide the replacement costs are outweigh it, so we'll keep looking after it, or we might just replace it. So again, these are things you want to think about when we're thinking about strategies. So what we can do is look at a few different views of how we want to look at maintenance. There are two different ways we can address this by looking at the expert view, which is in here, which is the table view, which means you're breaking down the electric motors and low voltage. We can see this is now looking at the actual tags themselves and what maintenance is against them. This is be quite comfortable for people that are used to building maintenance plans for CMSs and things like that, which is great. You can see the medium and lows. That's a low voltage motor. We're not doing, we're doing a motor inspection, but we're not doing a detailed inspection because it's a low criticality. Again, this is moving around the ability to applicate maintenance based on the type of equipment and the criticality, so you can decide how that looks. Again, we understand that sometimes this sort of view can be quite hard for some people to visualize and understand. What we're looking to do then across this side is actually capture the information. So we've got the frequency, the units we're in, the type of maintenance it is, the job description. In this section here, we can actually open this piece up and actually see what is contained within that job plan text or the task. The data then is in a position where we can look to see whether it's online, whether a PM approach or a condition monitoring approach, for instance, is a condition for work offline or online, durations, the hours, the resources, the type of resource, all these things are in here. Ultimately, what we thought we also needed was a way to run workshops to get decisions on this. And again, this is about taking the experience we've had over doing this over many years and making sure that we make this accessible. So what we have is the maintenance tablet mode, which breaks it into the different disciplines or different locations, and we say here is instrumentation, for instance. This would open up and actually you've got a legend to say we in this situation they are all in progress. There's certain ones as you complete them and sign them off, you can actually see the progress. These little grey sections will move up and we will deliver, you know then as you work through the agreements and the workshops, you know what's making progress. And if there is delays in any part of getting a technical authority, for instance, from instrumentation to agree to these strategies, we can work out what that is and what help they need to free up their time, or can we help in any way to provide experts to help on these things. So if you open one of these things up, we can see the electrical part. AC electric motor opens up. In this section you can see an EMAC02. So this is a type of a low voltage induction motor. This is when we start getting into expanding out a little bit on your equipment types and getting into subtypes, because the maintenance, although it's an electric motor and it's an AC one, it might be low voltage or high voltage. The ISO standard does not break that down. What we want to do when it comes to maintenance, we know there are differences in high voltage motors and low voltage motors. We want to make sure we're in a position to allocate the most accurate maintenance we can. So you can actually go in here and add a new subcode to that, which again, your code, you make that in the way that you would wish to do it. Again, if there's a client and you're not using the ISO codings, we would then be able to do your own code if you would like. We would always map that back in though to ensure things are lined up properly. And then the description of it as well. So when you click into this one, as it opens up, you can see the job tasks that are applicable to this, and you can select which ones you want to apply or not apply. So if there's certain things you don't want to do any sort of detailed inspection, all you're going to do is motor inspections, then act on it. Potentially just say you're just taking the approach where you're going to just change out your electric motors, then you would just do that. You would not want to assign that. And you can see here quite clearly laid out the stuff that was a little bit more difficult to see in the expert view. You can see here quite clearly you've got a job description, you've got the type of work condition it is, the approach, the frequency for high, medium and lows. So again, you can see why the criticality is so important to have had this established earlier, because you are going to do potentially no maintenance on a low criticality piece of equipment, and how long it takes and also how many resources. And then you can proceed to the maintenance review, which then lists all the locations that this would apply to. And in here you can start to decide whether you want to, if there's any exceptions potentially that comes out of there that you can note down, then that would be approved, and you would know who was involved in the meeting, who was there, when it was signed off, and what time and date, so you have that auditable trail of getting those decisions made.